The lecture hall was unusually quiet that morning. Students sat in rows, whispering softly, waiting for the professor to begin. Holographic screens hovered above the desks, showing faint, shifting images of strange ruins and unknown symbols. The air smelled faintly of old books and electricity. Professor Arlen, a tall figure with a calm, commanding presence, walked to the front of the hall. He wore a long coat lined with silver trim. His eyes sparkled as he glanced at the students, as if he knew a secret no one else did. "Today," he said, his voice echoing slightly, "we will explore a civilization lost to time, a civilization far older and more advanced than we ever imagined." The students leaned forward. Some were excited. Some were nervous. Among them sat Alara, a young woman in her final year, paying close attention. She was clever, observant, and always curious about mysteries. Holograms floated above the stage, showing alien cities with towers that glowed under strange suns, bridges spanning massive chasms, and symbols etched into walls that seemed to move slightly as you looked at them. "Notice the architecture," Professor Arlen said. "It is unlike anything on Earth or any known planet. The people of this civilization understood energy in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. They observed the stars, the planets, even life itself." As the lecture continued, Ilara felt a strange pull. One of the holograms shifted, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a small human figure among the alien buildings. She blinked, and it was gone. She shook her head. She must be imagining things. Professor Arlen paused and looked at the students with a subtle smile. "This civilization left behind something unusual," he said. "Artifacts, messages, and a record of events that seem familiar." Familiar? Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She tried to focus, but the words felt oddly directed at her. The professor tapped a small device, and a new hologram appeared. This time, it was a detailed stone tablet, covered in intricate carvings. The symbols glowed faintly. As the lights reflected off the surface, Ilara felt a shiver. One of the carvings looked like her. She leaned closer. Her pulse quickened. Could it be? No. It was impossible. Professor Arlen's voice cut through her thoughts. "This symbol represents a young woman," he said. "A human who existed long after this civilization vanished. Strange, isn't it?" Ilara's eyes widened. She tried to look away, but curiosity held her in place. The professor walked slowly to the center of the room. He raised his hand, and the hologram shifted again. And then it happened. A familiar face appeared, one she could not believe. Her graduation photo floated in midair, glowing softly among the ancient carvings. The room went silent. Students gasped. Some whispered. Ilara's mind raced. How could this be? Her graduation photo was personal, private. How could it appear here, among a civilization that had disappeared thousands of years ago? Why is that there?" she whispered, barely audible. Professor Arlen's eyes twinkled. "That, my dear students," he said slowly, "is the mystery we are here to explore. Sometimes, the past and the future are not as separate as we think." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. Her classmates stared at her. Some looked confused, some afraid, some excited. She did not understand it herself. The hologram shifted again. More symbols appeared around her photo. They seemed to move, almost like they were alive. She could feel the strange energy in the room. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. "What does it mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Professor Arlen looked around the room, then back at her. "It means that this lost civilization," he said, "knew of someone like you. Someone important. Someone connected to the future." Ilara's stomach tightened. Could it be a coincidence? Or had the ancient civilization somehow observed her? And if so, why? The professor smiled faintly. "Pay attention, everyone. Some lessons are not just about history. Some are personal. And some reach across time itself." The holograms shifted once more. The image of her graduation photo hovered in front of her, surrounded by alien symbols, glowing softly. Ilara could feel her hands trembling. She was no longer just a student listening to a lecture. She was part of the story. As the class continued, the lecture hall seemed different. The air felt alive. The walls whispered secrets. Every symbol seemed to hint at something hidden. Ilara knew one thing for certain. Her life was now connected to a mystery far greater than she had ever imagined. And she had no idea how far it would go. After the shocking moment with her graduation photo, Ilara could not focus on the lecture. The professor continued to speak about the lost civilization, but her mind was elsewhere. How could an ancient society, lost thousands of years ago, know something about her? She tried to calm her racing thoughts, but every symbol on the holograms seemed to pull her in. As the lecture progressed, Professor Arlen displayed more artifacts. Stone tablets, holographic projections of alien landscapes, and mysterious devices filled the room. Each seemed stranger than the last, but one caught her attention immediately. It was a small metallic sphere, floating in mid-air. Strange symbols rotated around it. Ilara leaned closer. To her astonishment, some of the symbols looked exactly like letters she had used in her own personal diary. Her fingers itched to reach out, but she restrained herself. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the holograms. Professor Arlen's voice broke through her thoughts. "This artifact," he said, "was found buried beneath the capital of this lost civilization. Its purpose remains unclear, but the engraving suggests they observed not only their own time, but others far away, even beyond their world." Ilara felt a shiver. Could it mean they were observing her specifically? Her life? The professor tapped his device again, and a new projection appeared. This time, it showed a series of images, ancient landscapes, star systems, and humanoid figures interacting with technology that seemed almost like it belonged to the modern era. Then one of the figures caught her eye. It was a young woman in a graduation gown, holding a scroll. Her face was vague, but the features, the stance, it looked remarkably like Ilara. She gasped. A few students turned to her, but she quickly looked down, trying to act normal. "Is it possible?" she whispered to herself. "How could they know?" Professor Arlen paused and looked directly at her. "Ilara," he said softly, "sometimes history leaves messages for those who are meant to find them. You are not just observing this civilization. In a way, it is observing you." Her heartbeat quickened. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The lecture moved on, but Ilara's eyes kept returning to the holograms. Symbols seemed to shift subtly whenever she looked away and then back. It was as if the images were alive, reacting to her presence. During a break, she stayed behind in the hall, trying to examine the holograms more closely. She noticed a pattern forming in the symbols, a spiral of shapes that resembled a timeline. The timeline seemed to start thousands of years ago with the civilization's earliest records, and it extended all the way to her own graduation day. Her breath caught. Could it be a coincidence? Or was it deliberate? She thought back to the small events in her life, moments that had always felt unusual. Strange dreams of alien cities, symbols appearing in random places, a sense of déjà vu whenever she visited certain ruins. Maybe all of it was connected. A soft voice echoed in the hall. "Curious, aren't you?" Ilara spun around. Professor Arlen was still there, watching her closely. "You are noticing more than most," he said. "The lost civilization left hints, messages for someone who would understand. And now, you are seeing them." She swallowed hard. "Why me?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps because you were meant to. Perhaps because humanity itself is part of their message." Ilara's mind whirled. Could humans have a connection to this ancient civilization? Something no one else knew? She thought of the holograms, the floating artifacts, and the strange feeling of being watched. Her pulse raced as the professor walked closer. "Pay attention," he said. "History is not always about what happened. Sometimes, it is about what is yet to happen. And some lessons are personal." Suddenly, one hologram flickered and shifted. A new image appeared, a small star map, with certain planets highlighted. Among them, a faint dot glowed brighter than the rest. Ilara squinted. That dot, it was near her own home system. Her stomach tightened. Could it mean the lost civilization was connected to Earth? Or even her family? Professor Arlen's voice drew her back. "You see, Ilara, this civilization understood more than we can imagine. They recorded events, lives, and even choices, hoping that one day, someone would uncover them." Ilara's mind raced. Why her graduation photo? Why her? And what did it all mean for humanity? The lecture ended, but she stayed seated, staring at the fading holograms. Something had changed. The room was no longer just a classroom. It was a doorway to secrets that spanned centuries, maybe millennia. And Ilara knew one thing: her life was no longer just her own. She was part of something greater, something ancient and powerful. As she left the hall, she glanced back at the empty seats, the silent holograms, and the faint glow where her graduation photo had appeared. A chill ran down her spine. Somehow, the lost civilization had reached out to her, and she had no idea how far the connection would go. After the lecture, Ilara could not stop thinking about what she had seen. Her graduation photo, floating among alien symbols, haunted her. She kept asking herself, how is this possible? How could a lost civilization know about me? Back in her dorm, she pulled out her laptop and her notebook. Symbols from the holograms kept appearing in her mind. She started drawing them, comparing them to old notes she had found in her family records. To her shock, some symbols matched markings she had seen in her grandmother's old journals, strange lines and shapes her family had never explained. It was as if her own life had been quietly recorded, long before she was born. That night, Ilara had a dream. She was standing in a vast city made of shining crystal and floating platforms. Strange towers reached toward unknown stars. Alien figures moved silently, studying the skies. And in the center, a large projection appeared, a map of the galaxy, with certain stars glowing brighter. One of the glowing stars was her home system. She woke up gasping. Her pulse raced. Was it just a dream? Or a message? The next day, she returned to the lecture hall. The class had moved on to other topics, but Professor Arlen noticed her unsettled expression. "You returned," he said, a faint smile on his lips. I couldn't stop thinking about the symbols," she admitted. "And the photo. My graduation picture. How could they have known?" The professor nodded. "That is exactly the question. This lost civilization had abilities we are only beginning to understand. They could observe, record, and perhaps influence life across vast distances." Ilara's mind whirled. Influence life? Across thousands of years? Across the galaxy? Professor Arlen tapped a device, and the hologram shifted. New projections appeared, star charts, sequences of events, and humanoid figures moving through strange landscapes. "This," he said, "is their message. They left signals for someone who could understand them. Someone connected to humanity." Ilara leaned closer. She noticed small movements in the holograms, symbols forming patterns, almost like they were alive, rearranging themselves whenever she looked. She felt a strange energy. It was almost as if the holograms were aware of her presence. Suddenly, one symbol detached itself from the main hologram and floated toward her. It glowed softly. When she reached out, it hovered near her hand. She felt warmth, recognition. "This is, for me," she whispered. Professor Arlen's voice was calm but firm. "Yes, Ilara. You are beginning to see the connection." They recorded the past, but also left instructions. Instructions for someone who could continue their work. Ilara's heart pounded. Continue their work? Me? She looked around. Her classmates seemed unaware of the strange movements in the holograms. To them, it was just a lecture. But for her, it was becoming something personal, an awakening. She spent hours after class studying the projections. Patterns began to emerge. The symbols formed sequences, almost like a language. And parts of that language seemed to match the events of her own life. The day she was born, the day she entered school, even moments from her graduation. Her pulse quickened. It was impossible, yet undeniable. Then she noticed something even stranger. The holograms included warnings. Small symbols indicated danger, caution, and decisions yet to come. It was as if the civilization was preparing her for something she had not yet encountered. A voice echoed in the hall, though no one else was there. It was faint, soft, but unmistakable. "Follow the path," it said. "Observe. Remember. Protect." Ilara froze. Her mind screamed questions. Who is speaking? Is this real? Or am I imagining it? Professor Arlen stepped closer. "You are not imagining it," he said. "The signals reach those who are ready. And you, Ilara, are ready. But be careful. Some knowledge is heavy. Some discoveries, dangerous." Her stomach tightened. Dangerous? Why? She realized that the lecture was no longer just an academic exercise. It was a call to action. She was being asked to uncover a secret, one that had been hidden for thousands of years. And she felt a strange pride, tinged with fear. Humans, she realized, had always been underestimated. Small, fragile, and short-lived in the universe. But if she was connected to this lost civilization, perhaps humans were capable of more than anyone had imagined. Ilara stared at the holograms. Symbols, stars, and her own image floated together. She was beginning to understand that her life, her choices, and even her very existence were linked to something far greater. The professor's words echoed in her mind. History is not only about the past. Sometimes, it reaches forward, shaping those who can listen. And sometimes, it chooses one person to continue its legacy. Ilara clenched her fists. She did not know what lay ahead. She did not know what dangers she would face. But one thing was clear, she could not ignore this connection. Somewhere, across time and space, the lost civilization was waiting. And they had chosen her. The lecture hall was empty, except for Ilara and the glowing holograms. Since the day her graduation photo had appeared, strange things had been happening. Symbols that once felt static now shifted and moved, almost as if they were alive. And tonight, they seemed to respond to her thoughts. Ilara hesitated but reached out. A holographic symbol floated gently toward her palm. It felt warm, almost like it was welcoming her touch. She gasped. The others in the dorm were asleep, yet here she was, connected to something far beyond human understanding. Suddenly, the room seemed to change. The walls faded, replaced by a vast alien city. Towers shimmered with crystal light, and floating platforms stretched endlessly. Strange figures moved silently, observing the stars. Her heart raced. She realized that she was inside the vision, or the vision was inside her. She could feel the heartbeat of the lost civilization, as if their energy flowed through her veins. A soft, melodic voice whispered, "You are ready." Ilara spun around, but no one was there. The voice continued, calm and patient. "Observe. Learn. Protect." The symbols on the holograms rearranged themselves. They showed events from her life, but altered slightly, ways she could have chosen differently. They showed decisions, paths, and warnings. Some were mundane, others, frightening. She realized with a chill that the civilization had been watching humanity, perhaps even influencing subtle choices. And now, she was part of that chain. Her pulse quickened as one hologram expanded. It showed a vast fleet of ships, not human ships as she knew them, but vessels shaped by alien intelligence. Each ship carried advanced technology that humans had never imagined. The voice whispered again, "Humanity has potential. Some must awaken first." Ilara understood. She was being chosen to awaken that potential. Humans had always been underestimated, fragile, short-lived, small in the vast universe. Yet here, the lost civilization seemed to recognize something special in humanity, something worth preparing, something worth protecting. She stumbled back, overwhelmed. Could she do this? Could one person really be the bridge between humans and a civilization that had vanished millennia ago? The hologram shifted, showing a map of the galaxy. Certain stars glowed brighter, and one in particular flickered, her home system. The voice continued, "Danger approaches. Knowledge is your weapon. Use it wisely." Ilara clenched her fists. She felt a surge of responsibility. This was bigger than her graduation, bigger than her life. The lost civilization had left a legacy, and somehow, she was the key. A new projection appeared, symbols forming sequences, almost like a language. Some of the symbols were familiar, drawn from her grandmother's old journals. Others were completely alien. As she traced them with her fingers, she felt a connection, not just to the symbols, but to the civilization itself. Professor Arlen's earlier words echoed in her mind. History is not always about the past. Sometimes, it reaches forward, shaping those who can listen. And sometimes, it chooses one person to continue its legacy. Ilara realized the lecture had not been teaching her about history. It had been preparing her, awakening her senses, and showing her a responsibility she could not ignore. A bright light flared from the holograms. Suddenly, the city around her vanished. She was back in the empty lecture hall, panting. The holograms shimmered and faded, leaving only faint symbols on the air. Her classmates would never believe what she had seen. Even Professor Arlen could not explain it entirely. It was personal. It was her awakening. She looked at the final image floating in the air, her graduation photo, surrounded by alien symbols. It was no longer a shock. It was a calling. Ilara understood. She could not ignore it. Humans were small, fragile, and underestimated. But if she could unlock the lessons of the lost civilization, humanity could become more than anyone imagined. The room was silent again, yet she felt it. The civilization's presence, patient, waiting, guiding. Ilara whispered softly, "I will learn. I will protect. I will be ready." And for the first time, she felt truly connected, not just to history, but to the stars, to humanity, and to something far greater than herself. Her journey had begun. Ilara could not sleep. The images from her lecture and the awakening haunted her. Every symbol, every hologram, every glowing star seemed to speak to her in a language she barely understood. Days passed, and she continued studying the projections. Slowly, she began to recognize patterns, sequences that could be decoded, instructions from the lost civilization. It was as if they had prepared a message for humanity, and she was the first to understand it. One evening, while she traced a series of symbols, the room trembled slightly. A holographic star map appeared, larger than ever. Stars blinked like eyes, and one particular point glowed fiercely, her home system. Her pulse quickened. Is it happening now? Suddenly, a bright light filled the room. The hologram shifted, forming a bridge of light that extended toward her. She stepped closer. The symbols rearranged themselves, forming humanoid figures. They were not entirely human, not entirely alien. They were representations of the lost civilization. And then, a voice echoed through her mind, clear and commanding. Humanity is ready. You are the first to awaken. The galaxy will soon see what you can do. Ilara staggered back. She was not alone. The figures moved, projecting themselves across her room. They showed vast cities, fleets of ships, and technologies far beyond anything humans had ever created. They observed you, the voice continued. Not to harm, to prepare. Now you may communicate, guide, and protect your species. Your choices will shape the future. Ilara's mind raced. This is not just a vision. This is a call to action. The next day, she returned to Professor Arlen. Something is happening, she whispered. They are reaching out, for humanity. Professor Arlen's eyes narrowed. I feared this day would come sooner than expected. Humanity is being observed. The signals are designed to test who can respond responsibly. He handed her a device, small, sleek, and humming faintly. This will allow you to interact with them. But be cautious. Knowledge this advanced can overwhelm the unprepared. Ilara nodded. She understood the weight of responsibility. Humans were small, fragile, and vulnerable in the universe. Yet here she was, entrusted with a gift that could change everything. That evening, she activated the device. The holographic city reappeared, more vivid and alive than ever. The figures extended their hands, or what she assumed were hands, and one of them pointed to a distant star system. Observe, the voice instructed. Through the hologram, she saw worlds she had never known. Civilizations struggling to survive. Some technologically advanced, some primitive, but all fragile. The lost civilization had prepared this knowledge for a reason, to guide humanity toward responsibility and protection of life. Ilara realized humans were being tested. Could they handle such power? Could they evolve to meet challenges the galaxy had never faced? Days turned into weeks. Ilara continued her interactions with the holograms, learning, understanding, and decoding their messages. She began to see patterns that suggested humanity itself had a role to play in the galaxy. Then came the first real sign of urgency. One night, while she studied a star map, the device flickered violently. A new set of symbols appeared, warnings of approaching danger. A fleet of unknown ships, far more advanced than any human technology, was moving toward the solar system. Ilara felt a chill. This was not theoretical anymore. The galaxy was real. The lost civilization's instructions were not just lessons, they were preparation. Professor Arlen arrived immediately after receiving her urgent message. You found the first signal of contact, he said gravely. Humanity is about to face its first challenge. And you are at the center of it. Ilara looked at the glowing map. We're ready, she said. But, are humans? Professor Arlen shook his head. Not yet. But you might be the one to show them how. As the night stretched on, Ilara activated the device once more. The figures projected new instructions, fleets to study, technologies to understand, messages to deliver. She realized she was not alone. She was humanity's first link to something far greater than Earth, far greater than anything they had imagined. And with that realization came determination. If humanity was going to survive and thrive, she would make sure they were ready. The holograms flickered one last time before the night ended, leaving a silent, glowing message hovering in the air. Awaken. Protect. Lead. Humanity's time has come. Ilara stared at it, knowing everything had changed. The lost civilization had chosen humanity, and chosen her, to begin a new chapter for the galaxy. The galaxy was watching. Ilara knew it now. Humanity's awakening was no longer secret. The lost civilization had prepared a path of knowledge, responsibility, and immense power. But with power came choice. And choice carried consequences. Through the device, the holograms showed her the approaching threat. Unknown ships, sleek and menacing, moved silently across the stars toward the solar system. Their technology was unlike anything humans had built. Shields, weapons, engines that defied understanding. Ilara's pulse quickened. She felt a mix of fear and determination. The lost civilization had given humanity knowledge, but knowledge alone could not save them. It had to be used wisely. Professor Arlen entered the room, his expression grave. The choice is yours, Ilara, he said. Humanity can be guided toward survival, or left to learn the hard way. But only one path can be taken. She looked at the star map glowing in the hologram. Every star, every fleet, every signal seemed to be waiting for her decision. The lost civilization had provided the tools, but now it was up to her to decide how humans would use them. Ilara thought of her classmates, her family, everyone on Earth. She thought of the generations of humans who had struggled, fought, and dreamed despite their small place in the universe. We are fragile, but not weak. She realized the final choice was not just about defense. It was about humanity's role in the galaxy. Would humans step forward as observers, protectors, and explorers? Or would they remain ignorant, unprepared for what lay ahead? The holograms shifted. Symbols formed two distinct paths. One path showed humanity ignoring the knowledge, facing destruction, chaos, and collapse. The other path showed humanity learning, adapting, and surviving, growing stronger, respected across the galaxy. The voice of the lost civilization spoke clearly this time, calm and commanding. Choose wisely. One path leads to oblivion. The other, to legacy. Ilara's hands trembled. She could feel the weight of every decision humanity had ever made, every triumph and failure, pressing on her shoulders. But she also felt hope. The lost civilization had seen something in humans, something worth protecting. Her gaze fell on the fleet approaching Earth. The symbols on the hologram pulsed rapidly, signaling danger. Time was running out. Ilara took a deep breath. She raised her hand, touching the central symbol that connected all the others. Light spread through the holograms, illuminating her room and then the stars beyond. I choose the path of awakening, she whispered. Humans will learn. We will adapt. We will survive, and we will protect what we can. Immediately, the holograms shifted. Symbols rearranged into new sequences, showing humans how to understand alien technology, how to communicate, and how to prepare defenses without aggression. She felt the energy of the lost civilization flow through her. She was no longer just a student. She was humanity's guide. Professor Arlen watched silently, awe in his eyes. You've chosen wisely, he said. This is more than survival. This is the start of humanity's legacy. Ilara saw visions of humans building ships, understanding new technologies, and forming alliances with distant civilizations. She saw humans learning to be respected, not feared. But the threat was still real. The alien fleet drew closer. The voice spoke one last time. You are ready. Humanity is ready. Lead them. Ilara closed her eyes, focusing on the patterns, the sequences, the strategies. She could feel the choices branching, but this time, she was in control. Humans were fragile, But they were resilient. They had always survived, against the odds, against the unknown. Now, they would rise not just as survivors, but as guardians of knowledge, capable of standing among the stars. She opened her eyes and touched the hologram once more. A pulse of energy shot through the room and into the fleet of approaching ships. They slowed, halted, and then retreated. No violence, no destruction. Only understanding. Humanity had been tested, and humans had passed. Ilara sank into her chair, exhausted but proud. She had made the choice that would shape the future. A single person had influenced the destiny of an entire species. And as she looked at the stars, she realized something profound. The lost civilization had not just observed humanity, they had believed in it. Humans were small, fragile, short-lived, but they were capable of greatness. And the galaxy would remember that. The galaxy was quiet, but it was changed forever. Ilara watched from her observatory as humanity began to awaken. Ships built with knowledge from the lost civilization now floated in orbit, and scientists worked tirelessly to understand alien technologies. No longer were humans blind to the vast possibilities of the stars. They were beginning to step into their true potential. The alien fleet that had once approached Earth never returned. Instead, the galaxy had taken notice. Civilizations that had ignored humans before now paused. Humans were no longer small and weak. They were alert, prepared, and aware. Ilara thought back to the first moment her graduation photo had appeared in the lecture. She had been shocked, frightened, unsure. But now she understood. Humanity had been chosen not because of strength or numbers, but because of something deeper: resilience, curiosity, and the capacity to grow. Across the galaxy, records began to change. Histories were rewritten to include the human contribution. Leaders of distant worlds, once arrogant and dismissive, began to acknowledge Earth. Humanity had become a name spoken with respect. On Earth, life continued, but differently. People no longer ignored the stars. Children learned not just to survive but to imagine. Engineers and explorers looked beyond Earth, inspired by knowledge and visions of what could be. Ilara walked through the lecture hall where it all began. Holograms now flickered softly, a reminder of the civilization that had watched, waited, and guided. She smiled. Humans had survived the first test. They had begun to awaken. The galaxy, too, had learned. Civilizations that had once underestimated humanity began to reconsider their own histories. They realized strength is not only in fleets, weapons, or numbers. Strength can be in memory, wisdom, and courage. Ilara turned her gaze to the stars and remembered the voice of the lost civilization. Awaken. Protect. Lead. Humanity's time has come. It was not just a command. It was a promise. Humans had been small, fragile, short-lived. Yet, in that fragility lay potential. And now, the galaxy could see it. In distant councils, leaders spoke quietly of Earth. They are no longer simple observers, one said. They understand responsibility. They protect life, not just themselves. Refugees, travelers, and explorers began to trust humans more. Ships carrying aid and knowledge were accepted without fear. Humanity's role was no longer optional. It had become essential. Back on Earth, children stared at the night sky, dreaming of worlds they had never seen. Their imaginations were free, unbound by limits that had once defined human civilization. And somewhere, in quiet labs and observatories, scientists whispered the same truth: humans had a legacy to fulfill. Ilara knew it was only the beginning. She had guided humanity through the first choice, but countless challenges lay ahead. Still, she was proud. Humans had learned the lessons of the lost civilization, not through force, but through understanding and courage. And the galaxy would remember. It would remember humans who rose from fragility to responsibility. Humans who could observe, learn, and protect. Humans who were underestimated but proved themselves capable of greatness. Ilara watched as new stars twinkled in the sky, some familiar, some unknown. Each represented a world, a civilization, a possibility. And humans would one day reach them, not as conquerors, but as guardians and learners. She whispered to herself, smiling, "We were small, but never insignificant. The galaxy will never forget us." And as the stars shone brightly, a faint shimmer appeared across the night sky, a reminder that the lost civilization was still watching, still guiding, and still believing. Humans had been tested. Humans had chosen wisely, and the galaxy would never forget humanity again.